If it makes you feel good to cosplay as revolutionaries, knock yourself out, burn yourself out. Just don't drag Gaza into it. Also, throwing stuff on paintings is just stupid.
Bill Maher recently torched the woke mob for despising America just to push their selfish agendas. You know how the woke crowd slams America every chance they get, yet never have the courage to leave. Maher exposed their hypocrisy with biting critiques and laugh-out-loud roast.
Someone needs to tell the people who block traffic in the name of a cause, no one likes you. And you're probably hurting your cause. In case you haven't seen what's going on lately, activists for ending the war in Gaza have taken to gathering on roads and bridges and stopping commuters from crossing. It happened last week in New York and San Francisco, Chicago, Seattle. They also blocked traffic here on the 405, but no one knows.
So Maher kicked things off by unloading on the woke mob who somehow believe they have the moral authority to block roads just because people don't share their views. Think about how absurd that is. Random activists deciding they get to hold entire cities hostage because the world doesn't bend to their opinions. I've always said this logic is broken, especially when the issues they're screaming about usually have little or nothing to do with America in the first place. And even if we were directly involved, why should hardworking everyday commuters, parents rushing to pick up their kids, workers heading to shifts, students trying to get to class, be punished for decisions made by politicians in Washington? It's cowardly, it's hypocritical, and it's pure theater. Maher ripped into that hypocrisy with the kind of raw, unapologetic humor that cuts straight through the nonsense. And the crowd knew he was dead right.
What they did notice was this, that you have to be pretty dumb to think that the way to bring people around to your point of view is to make them late to pick up their kids from daycare. And that's what most normies are thinking. I have a kid. I have a job. And yes, I'm sure there are injustices on both sides in the Middle East, as there are injustices all over the world. But I'm going to be late for work, something you protesters on the bridge seem to have the luxury of not having to worry about, which seems kind of privilegey.
Maher then dropped a brutal truth bomb, one that the woke mob refuses to accept. Average everyday Americans are far more focused on their own lives than on whatever global cause is trending online. And that's not because they don't care about the world. It's because they're too busy holding their own lives together. Most people are juggling work, bills, kids, and 1,000 other responsibilities just to keep moving forward. The biggest concern isn't marching in the streets. It's making sure there's gas in the car and food on the table. And that's where the absurdity of these protesters becomes crystal clear. The very roads they are blocking are the same roads ordinary people need to get to their jobs, schools, or doctor's appointments. Maher's point hit hard. Everyday Americans don't have time for virtue signaling chaos. And punishing them for simply trying to live isn't activism. It's arrogance.
You can glue your hands to the street because your hands don't have to do any work today. I'm not saying there aren't sincere passions about Gaza, especially among people from the region, but social justice warriors, for a lot of them, it seems like it's more about the warrioring than about whatever the cause is. If you really cared about apartheid so much, which Israel does not actually practice, Arabs there vote, they serve in parliament, they sit on the judiciary, wouldn't you start with this? With the hundreds of millions of women in the world who live under a true apartheid, a gender apartheid of the most brutal kind? I'll wait.
Maher pulled no punches when he exposed the glaring hypocrisy behind these so-called protests for the freedom of Gaza. At the end of the day, it's not really about the cause. It's about the optics, the clout, and the thrill of being seen as a warrior for justice. If these activists actually cared about human rights, they'd be shouting about the brutal realities faced by women across many Arab countries, where the oppression is not symbolic, but suffocating. Women are denied basic freedoms, stripped of rights, and punished for the mere act of speaking out. Yet, silence, not a whisper of protest from the same people clogging up American streets. Even wise, countless entertainers, athletes, and celebrities have traveled to these very countries, smiling for photos, cashing paychecks without ever daring to raise their voices. Maher's point was sharp. It's performative outrage, not principle, driving these protests.
Are you really speaking truth to power, or do you just think you look cool in a keffiyeh? Which is really just the new Che Guevara t-shirt. Another historical figure you never researched and so think is a hero, but was actually a sadistic, racist monster fighting for communism, the worst form of government ever. But these are small matters. When
Bill raised another razor-sharp point. The so-called woke warriors love to rally around figures, slogans, and trendy t-shirts. Yet, they almost never understand the origin, history, or meaning behind them. To them, it's not about substance. It's about style. It's about looking cool on Instagram, waving a flag they can't explain, or wearing a shirt with a symbol they've never studied. The irony? Many of these same figures or objects they glorify are rooted in dark, complicated, even violent histories. They were symbols of oppression, corruption, or exploitation. But none of that matters to the woke crowd. What matters is the image, the aesthetic, the dopamine hit of virtue signaling without the burden of knowledge. Maher skewed this perfectly, pointing out that activism without understanding is nothing more than cosplay. And in the end, ignorance dressed up as righteousness isn't justice. It's just another performance.
Matters when activism merges with narcissism. Less about the cause and more about me. Look at me. Watch me. And if you like the way I'm fighting injustice, remember to like and subscribe.
Maher's absolutely right. At the core, so many of these so-called activists are nothing more than narcissists chasing attention, validation, and maybe even a quick buck from their social media platforms. For the life of me, I can't wrap my head around why anyone would rally behind a figure, slogan, or symbol they clearly know nothing about. It's not conviction, it's content. They're not fighting for justice. They are fishing for followers, likes, and engagement. Every protest becomes an opportunity for a selfie. Every march, a chance to post a woke clip that racks up views. It's less about sacrifice and more about branding. The cause is secondary. The spotlight is the prize. Maher cut right through this facade, showing that what we're really watching isn't activism at all, but performance art for clout. At the end of the day, it's not about change. It's about clicks, clout, and cash.
In February, a sad, confused man even lit himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy, and in his last Facebook post, he said, "Many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if I was alive during slavery?" Interesting cocktail question, sir, and I guess the right answer is kill myself. But it wouldn't have actually fixed the problem if General Ulysses S. Grant had immolated himself and his last words were, "Hey, Lincoln, are you using that?"
Maher shines a spotlight on the sheer absurdity of the woke mob's favorite stunts. Acts that might look dramatic or even noble on camera, but ultimately accomplish absolutely nothing. We've all seen the theatrics, self-immolation, flag burnings, effigies set ablaze. They are designed to shock, to terrify, and to rack up viral clips online. But when the smoke clears, what has actually changed? Nothing. The world remains the same. Policies remain the same. And the very people they claim to fight for are no closer to freedom or justice. Maher cuts through the spectacle by pointing out the obvious. If these activists were truly serious about creating change, they'd put down the matches and start taking concrete, meaningful steps. Real change doesn't come from stage outrage or pyrotechnics. It comes from hard work, strategy, and solutions. Anything less is just performance for the cameras, not progress for society.
I don't want to diminish how sad it is that someone would take their own life for any reason, but maybe from now on, before anyone commits an act of civil disobedience, they should ask themselves a few questions, like, is the most important thing in my life something I hadn't heard of 6 months ago? Do I even know? Do I even know what the fuck I'm talking about? Am I really here for the cause, or is the cause here to bring you me?
Come across countless protesters who seem to know shockingly little about the very causes they are supposedly fighting for. One encounter that sticks with me was with a protester who confidently declared that anyone could simply choose to be any gender they wanted, as if it were as casual as changing clothes. When I pressed for a logical explanation, the exchange quickly turned lopsided. The protesters stumbled, offering no coherent reasoning, just recycled talking points and empty slogans. It was clear they weren't driven by deep understanding or personal conviction, but by the desire to align with whatever narrative was fashionable in their circle. That's the problem. Too many of these demonstrations are powered less by informed belief and more by peer pressure and virtue signaling. Maher's critique exposes this hollowness. Activism without knowledge isn't bravery. It's theater. And in the end, it collapses under the weight of its own ignorance.
If it makes you feel good to cosplay as revolutionaries, knock yourself out, burn yourself out. Just don't drag Gaza into it. Also, throwing stuff on paintings is just stupid.
It's fascinating and honestly a bit disturbing the lengths these so-called woke social justice warriors will go just to attract attention to causes they barely understand. They are willing to scream in the streets, glue themselves to roads, and even to face priceless works of art, all in the name of raising awareness. But here's the kicker. Most of them couldn't hold a serious conversation about the very issues they're supposedly fighting for. It's activism as spectacle, not substance. Sometimes I can't help but imagine what would happen if art lovers and museum goers decided to turn the tables protesting against the protesters who vandalize and destroy centuries-old paintings. After all, these masterpieces are part of humanity's shared history, and watching them get ruined by people chasing clout is infuriating. Maher nailed it when he highlighted this madness. It's not about change, it's about attention. And the real damage ends up being cultural, not political.
He sees mashed potatoes on a Monet and thinks, he's got a point, I should recycle my cans. Lastly, Google employees staged a sit-in to protest their company doing business with Israel. Their T-shirt said, Googlers against genocide, but they could have just as well said, look at me, see me. And Google did see them to the door.
At the end of the day, Maher's takedown